Millionaire CEO heard his maid's daughter crying over a broken toy. His action shocked the household. The sound reached him where nothing ever did. It slipped beneath the thick silence of the penthouse, past the muted hum of climate control and the distant city noise sealed behind glass. It was thin, broken, and trembling, a child's cry. Not loud enough to demand attention, yet sharp enough to pierce something buried deep in the chest of Alexander Royce, billionaire CEO. A man who owned companies on 3 continents and believed himself immune to distractions. He paused mid-step, one hand resting on the marble counter, his cufflinks catching the morning light. Crying was not a sound that belonged in his home. This space was engineered for control. Clean lines, expensive restraint, emotions kept neatly out of sight. The staff moved quietly, efficiently, like shadows trained not to exist. Children were not part of the design. The cry came again. Alexander frowned, irritation flaring first. He checked his watch. He had a board call in 40 minutes, a merger announcement that could move markets. Yet his body betrayed him, turning slightly toward the hallway that led to the staff quarters. The sound was coming from there, from a place he had never once stepped into. He told himself to ignore it. Then the cry broke, splintered into sobs so raw they didn't ask for permission. They begged, "Please, it's broken." A tiny voice whispered through tears, "Mama, I didn't mean to." Alexander's jaw tightened. He exhaled slowly, annoyed now at himself. This was not his concern. Problems had boundaries. His ended at the edge of his polished world. Still, his feet moved. The corridor narrowed, the luxury fading with every step. The air smelled faintly of detergent and something warm. Cheap tea, perhaps. The crying grew louder until he stopped outside a half-closed door. Inside, a woman knelt on the floor, her back slightly hunched, wearing the plain gray uniform of his household staff. Maria, he knew her name only because it was on payroll documents he rarely read. In her arms was a little girl, no older than 6, her face blotched red, dark curls stuck to her cheeks with tears. On the floor lay a plastic toy horse, snapped cleanly at the neck. "I'll fix it," Maria murmured, her voice shaking with forced calm. "I promise, Mama will fix it." The girl sobbed harder. "But it was Papa's, you said. You said it was the last thing he gave me." The words landed like a quiet explosion. Alexander felt something twist unexpectedly in his chest. Papa, last thing. He hadn't meant to listen. Yet there he stood, a witness to grief so small and so heavy it seemed to press against the walls. Maria looked up then, and froze. Her eyes widened in horror as she scrambled to her feet, pulling the child close. "Sir, I'm so sorry," she said quickly, panic lacing every word. "I didn't know she'd be here. I can take her outside. She won't make noise again, I promise." Alexander raised a hand, not in anger, but instinctively, as if stopping a falling object. "It's fine," he said, though his voice sounded distant even to himself. The little girl peeked out from her mother's shoulder, her eyes wide and frightened, fixed on the stranger in the expensive suit. Her lower lip trembled. She clutched the broken toy like it was a lifeline. Something about the way she held it, like it mattered more than money ever had, made Alexander's breath hitch. He turned away abruptly, unsettled, already retreating back toward his world of glass and steel. But the crying followed him, echoing where silence once lived. And for the first time in years, Alexander Royce carried something invisible into his day. An ache he couldn't explain, and a question he hadn't yet dared to ask. That night, alone in his penthouse, he would make a decision that would shock the entire household. But first, he needed to understand why a broken toy had shaken him more than losing millions ever had. Sleep refused to come. Alexander Royce lay awake in his king-sized bed, the city glowing faintly beyond the glass walls, Manhattan pulsing like a living organism that never paused to breathe. Normally, numbers lulled him to rest, profit margins, timelines, leverage points. But tonight, all he could hear was a child's broken cry, and the way she had said "Papa" like the word still lived somewhere painful and alive. He hadn't seen the girl before. That in itself unsettled him. He knew every corner of his empire, every executive by name, yet a small human being had existed under his roof without registering on his radar. The realization scratched at something uncomfortable. How much of his world ran smoothly because he never looked too closely. Morning arrived gray and cold. Alexander rose early, dressed mechanically, his movements sharp with restraint. As he stepped into the kitchen, the penthouse was already alive with quiet activity. Footsteps softened by carpet, cups placed gently on counters. The staff existed in their usual, careful choreography. Maria stood near the sink, her posture stiff, eyes lowered. The little girl was not with her. "Good morning, sir," Maria said quickly, her voice professional but tight, as though bracing for impact. Alexander nodded, then surprised himself by stopping. "Your daughter," he said, the words sounding foreign on his tongue. "Is she all right?" Maria froze. For a second, fear flashed openly across her face, fear of reprimand, of losing the job that kept food on her table. "Yes, sir," she replied, a little too fast. "She's fine. I made sure she understands she must stay quiet. It won't happen again." Alexander frowned slightly. "That's not what I meant." Maria hesitated, then slowly exhaled. "Her name is Sophia," she said softly, as if offering a fragile truth. "She cries less today. Yesterday was difficult." Alexander remembered the broken toy, her father. Maria swallowed. "He passed away last year, construction accident. The company said it wasn't their fault." Her lips pressed together, holding back more words than she allowed to escape. "That toy horse was from him. He bought it at a street market. She sleeps with it every night." Alexander felt the weight of that simple object grow heavier in his mind. A plastic horse, a father's last gift, broken not just in half, but in meaning. "I tried to glue it," Maria continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "but it won't hold, and new ones." She shook her head gently. "They're expensive. Sophia doesn't understand money yet. She only understands loss." Something in that sentence lodged deep inside Alexander. He nodded once and turned away, but the words followed him into his study, into his meetings, into every email he signed. She only understands loss. He, on the other hand, understood control, strategy, fixing problems with resources so vast they often felt abstract. At noon, Alexander's sister, Evelyn, stopped by unannounced, something she did only when she sensed a storm brewing behind his composed exterior. "You look distracted," she said, settling into a chair across from him. "That's new." He hesitated, then told her about the crying, about the toy, about the girl. Evelyn listened quietly, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she leaned back, studying him. "Careful," she said gently. "You don't open doors like that unless you're ready for what's behind them." Alexander scoffed lightly. "It's just a child." "No," Evelyn replied. "It's a mirror." Later that evening, as Alexander passed the staff corridor again, he heard laughter this time, soft, fleeting, then silence. The door was closed. He stood there longer than necessary, hand hovering inches from the handle. He didn't know it yet, but the next time the door opened, nothing in his carefully ordered life would ever be the same. The first crack in the household's quiet order came 2 days later, and it came with sharp words and colder eyes. Alexander was in the middle of a conference call when raised voices echoed faintly through the penthouse. He tried to ignore it at first, keeping his tone steady as executives debated projections on the screen. But then a familiar small voice trembled through the walls, thin and frightened, followed by an adult's clipped reprimand. "No running here. This isn't a playground." The call ended abruptly. Alexander stood, irritation flaring again, but this time it wasn't directed at the noise. It was directed at the fact that the noise bothered him at all. He followed the sound. In the main corridor near the elevators, Sophia stood frozen, clutching the broken toy horse to her chest. Her shoulders shook as silent tears slid down her cheeks. Standing over her was Mrs. Caldwell, the house manager, impeccably dressed, posture sharp, authority worn like armor. I told you already, Mrs. Caldwell continued, her voice low but cutting. Staff children are not supposed to be wandering around. If Mr. Royce sees this, he is seeing this. The words landed like a slap. Mrs. Caldwell turned, color draining from her face as Alexander stepped into view. The air thickened instantly. "Yes, sir," she stammered, straightening. "I was just ensuring order." The child nearly knocked over a display vase. "These antiques are replaceable," Alexander said calmly. The words silenced her. Maria rushed in from the other end of the hall, panic etched into every line of her face. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said, pulling Sophia close. "She was only looking for the restroom. I told her to stay put. Please don't blame her." Sophia buried her face in her mother's uniform. Her small fingers gripping fabric like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Mrs. Caldwell cleared her throat. "With respect, sir, rules exist for a reason. Allowing staff families to treat this place casually sets a dangerous precedent." Alexander looked at Sophia again, her trembling body, the broken toy pressed against her heart. Casual, dangerous. The words felt grotesque in the face of such small grief. "She's 6, he said quietly. "Not a precedent." Mrs. Caldwell's lips tightened, of course, but emotions can't interfere with professionalism. That was when Alexander felt it, an old, familiar sensation rising from somewhere deep. The same cold authority he used in boardrooms, the same edge that made people listen. Professionalism, he said, his voice firm now, does not require humiliating a child. Maria gasped softly. Mrs. Caldwell stiffened. "I wasn't humiliating her." Alexander took a step closer. "Then why is she crying?" Silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. Other staff members lingered at a distance, pretending not to watch while absorbing every second. Mrs. Caldwell finally looked away. "I was enforcing policy." "Then the policy needs revisiting," Alexander replied, effective immediately. A ripple moved through the room, shock, disbelief, quiet fear. No one challenged house rules, not like this. Mrs. Caldwell nodded tightly. "As you wish, sir." She walked away, heels clicking sharply against marble, dignity wounded. Maria stood trembling, unsure whether to speak or flee. "Thank you," she whispered, eyes shining with gratitude and fear mixed together. "But please, I don't want trouble." Alexander crouched slowly in front of Sophia, lowering himself to her level. The movement alone stunned everyone watching. "What happened to your horse?" he asked gently. Sophia sniffed, peeking at him with watery eyes. "He broke," she whispered, "just like everything." The words struck deeper than any insult ever had. Alexander stood again, jaw tight, something decisive hardening inside him. What he didn't realize was that by defending Sophia publicly, he had crossed an invisible line, one that would cost him more than authority and force the household to choose sides. And the next conflict would not be so quiet. After that day, nothing felt the same, though everyone pretended it was. The penthouse returned to its polished silence, but beneath it ran a current of tension that no amount of routine could smooth over. Staff members spoke in lower voices, doors closed more carefully. Eyes followed Sophia whenever she appeared, as if her small presence carried the weight of a rule that had been broken and could never be repaired. Maria felt it most. She moved through her duties with her usual efficiency, but her shoulders stayed tight, her smile cautious. Gratitude toward Mr. Royce warred constantly with fear. Gratitude did not pay rent. Gratitude did not protect a single mother from quiet retaliation. She began keeping Sophia hidden in their small staff room whenever possible, letting the girl color silently on scrap paper while she worked. Sophia tried to be brave. She spoke less, laughed quieter. She carried the broken toy horse everywhere, its cracked neck carefully wrapped with tape that was already peeling. At night, she whispered to it, telling it about school, about missing her father, about the big house. That felt like a place she was never meant to belong. Alexander noticed all of it. He told himself he didn't. He tried to focus on numbers, on acquisitions, on meetings that stretched for hours. and meant nothing by the time they ended. But his eyes searched the hallways without permission, his ears tuned to sounds he once ignored. One evening, he found Maria in the laundry room, sitting on an upturned crate while Sophia slept beside her, curled like a question mark on a folded blanket. "She won't let go of that toy," Alexander said softly from the doorway. Maria startled, then relaxed when she saw him. "It's all she has left of him," she replied. "When her father died, everything else went with him, his clothes, his tools, even our home." Alexander stepped inside, the hum of machines filling the silence. "Where did you live before?" Maria hesitated, then answered, "A basement apartment in Queens. We lost it after the hospital bills. I took this job because it came with housing. I thought it would be temporary." "And Sophia's school? I take her to a public one nearby. I wake up at 5 every morning to make sure I'm back before my shift." She smiled faintly. "She's very smart, loves drawing horses." Alexander looked at the sleeping child. Her lashes were long, her grip still tight around the broken toy even in sleep. "Why didn't you ask for help?" he asked. Maria's smile faded. "Because people like me don't ask people like you," she said gently. "We endure. That's how we survive." The words stayed with him long after he left the room. That night, Alexander pulled out an old photo from his desk drawer, a rare thing. A younger version of himself stood beside his father, both dressed in modest clothes, pride shining in their eyes. His father had worked 2 jobs until his hands cracked and bled. He used to fix Alexander's broken toys with glue and wire, promising, as long as it still tries to stand, it's not useless. Alexander had forgotten that. The next morning, Sophia's school called. Maria answered with shaking hands, her face drained of color as she listened, nodding over and over. When she hung up, her knees nearly gave way. Sophia fell. She whispered when Alexander appeared. "She tripped during recess. They want to take her to urgent care, but I can't leave my shift." Alexander didn't think. He acted. "I'll drive," he said. Maria stared at him, stunned. "Sir, you can't. I can," he replied simply. As they rushed toward the elevator, alarms rang inside Maria's mind. Not just fear, but the terrifying realization that accepting this help might change everything. And for Alexander, sitting beside a maid in his own car, heading toward a frightened child, something else became painfully clear. He was no longer an observer. He was involved. And once you step into someone else's pain, there is no turning back. The urgent care waiting room smelled of antiseptic and cheap coffee, a world away from glass towers and quiet luxury. Alexander sat stiffly in a molded plastic chair, his tailored coat folded over his arm, watching Sophia swing her legs nervously from the examination bed. A small bandage wrapped her knee, bright white against her skin. "She's lucky," the nurse said kindly. "Just a scrape. Kids are resilient." Resilient. Alexander glanced at Maria, who nodded repeatedly in gratitude, her eyes glassy with relief. Sophia smiled weakly, then looked down at the toy horse resting beside her. The tape had loosened further. The head wobbled uselessly. "Mama," Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible, "can we fix him now?" Maria's throat tightened. "Soon, Carino, soon." Alexander felt something shift, decisive, unavoidable. He stood. "I'll be right back," he said, surprising both of them. 10 minutes later, he returned carrying a small paper bag. Inside was a brand. New toy horse, beautifully made, realistic down to the painted eyes. Sophia's face lit up for a split second, then fell. "But he's not him," she said softly. The words stunned Alexander. He knelt slowly in front of her. "You're right," he said. "He's not." He reached into the bag again and pulled out something else. A tiny repair kit from the hobby store next door. Glue, fine wire, small clamps. "We're going to fix him," Alexander said, "together." Maria covered her mouth, emotion flooding her face. They worked quietly on the exam table. Alexander's fingers were clumsy at first, unused to delicate work. Sophia watched closely, offering solemn advice, her small hands guiding his. When the horse finally stood upright again, even but whole, Sophia clapped softly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He's standing," she whispered, "just like Papa said." The room went very still. On the drive back, Sophia fell asleep in the back seat, the repaired horse tucked under her chin. Maria stared out the window, struggling to hold herself together. "You didn't have to do this," she said finally. "I know," Alexander replied. "That's why it matters." When they returned to the penthouse, the atmosphere had shifted. Mrs. Caldwell stood near the entrance, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes flicked from Sophia to Alexander's coat, still draped over his arm. Later that night, Alexander received a call from his board. Word had spread. Photos of him entering urgent care with a staff member and child were already circulating online, framed not as kindness, but as recklessness. Questions followed fast and sharp. Is the CEO distracted? Is he losing focus? Is this the man who should be steering billions? Alexander ended the call without answering. He walked to the staff corridor, where Maria sat alone, staring at the repaired toy in Sophia's hands. "I may have caused trouble," he said quietly. Maria looked up, fear returning. "I never wanted this." "I know," Alexander replied, "but sometimes doing the right thing shakes the wrong people." What neither of them knew was that this moment, this small, tender victory, had triggered something far larger, because the next move wouldn't be about a broken toy. It would be about whether compassion had a place at the top, or if it would cost Alexander everything he'd built. The backlash came quietly at first, wrapped in polite language and corporate concern. Alexander felt it in the pauses during meetings, the way certain board members avoided eye contact, the sudden urgency with which his assistant flagged strategic discussions. By the end of the week, the message became unmistakable. He was being watched, measured, and found wanting. "It's not personal," one director said over a secure call, voice smooth as glass. "But perception matters. Investors don't like unpredictability." "Helping a child is unpredictable now?" Alexander asked. A brief silence followed. Emotional involvement creates risk. The words tasted bitter. At home, the tension seeped into the household. Mrs. Caldwell began documenting every deviation from routine with quiet precision. Maria noticed the change immediately. Her schedule shifted, her workload increased, subtle pressures applied without open confrontation. Gratitude had turned into vulnerability. One afternoon, Maria was called into the office. "I'm afraid this arrangement is no longer sustainable," Mrs. Caldwell said, folding her hands. "Your daughter's presence has caused complications." Maria's heart pounded. "I've kept her out of the way. She's never disruptive." "Nevertheless," Mrs. Caldwell continued, "the board prefers clear boundaries. We'll provide a small severance." The word severance echoed like a door slamming shut. Maria walked out in a daze, tears blurring her vision. Sophia waited in the staff room, clutching her repaired horse. "Mama," she asked, "are we in trouble again?" Maria knelt and pulled her close, fighting to keep her voice steady. "No, my Emmer, we're just leaving." Alexander found out an hour later. He stood in the same office where billion-dollar decisions were made, staring at Mrs. Caldwell as if seeing her for the first time. "You fired her," he said. "I followed protocol." She replied evenly, "This household cannot become a shelter." Alexander laughed once, short, humorless. "Then you misunderstand what a household is." He walked straight into the board call. "This stops now," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "If my leadership is threatened because I showed humanity, then we need to redefine what leadership means. You're risking everything," a voice warned. Alexander thought of Sophia's small hands guiding his, of Maria's quiet endurance, of his father fixing broken toys with wire and hope. "Maybe," he said, "but I won't lose myself to keep a title." That night, he went to the staff room. Maria was packing silently, Sophia asleep beside her, the toy horse resting on her chest. When Maria saw Alexander, she froze. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. I never meant, you're not leaving, he said. Her eyes filled with disbelief. Sir, I've already spoken to legal. Alexander continued. You're not staff anymore. Effective immediately, you're under my family foundation. Housing, schooling, medical care all covered. Maria shook her head, overwhelmed. Why would you do this? Alexander looked at Sophia, breathing softly in sleep. Because broken things deserve a chance to stand. But outside those walls, forces were moving fast. The board scheduled an emergency vote. By morning, Alexander Royce might no longer be CEO, and the final test of his values was about to begin. Dawn crept into the boardroom like a quiet witness. Alexander stood alone at the window before the vote, the city stretching beneath him in pale gold and shadow. For the first time in years, he wasn't rehearsing arguments or calculating outcomes. He was remembering his father's rough hands, the smell of glue and metal, the simple certainty that some things were worth fixing even if they never looked perfect again. The board filed in one by one, expressions carefully neutral. The vote was swift. By a narrow margin, Alexander Royce was removed as CEO. There was no applause, no outrage, just the soft click of pens and the closing of folders. Power changed hands as calmly as it always did, and just like that, the empire he had built was no longer his to command. He walked out without speaking. News broke within hours. Headlines framed it as a fall from grace, an emotional misstep, a cautionary tale about mixing heart with business. Stock prices wavered. Analysts debated his legacy like it belonged to the past already. Alexander ignored it all. Instead, he returned to the penthouse one last time, not as an owner, but as a man gathering what mattered. In the staff corridor, Maria waited, holding Sophia's hand. Fear flickered in her eyes when she saw him. It's done, he said gently. Maria swallowed. I'm so sorry. He shook his head. Don't be. This is the first decision in years that feels right. They moved out within days. Not into luxury, but into a modest townhouse owned by the foundation Alexander now fully devoted himself to. The organization, once a quiet side project, became his purpose, supporting families who lived on the edge of loss, invisible until something broke. Months passed. One afternoon, Alexander sat on the floor of the townhouse, helping Sophia with her homework. The repaired toy horse stood proudly on the shelf above them, a little crooked, but standing. Mr. Alex, Sophia said suddenly, looking up at him, did you lose your job because of me? The question cut deep. He met her eyes and smiled softly. No, he said, I found myself because of you. Maria watched from the doorway, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. The story did not end with ruin, as many expected. Years later, Alexander's foundation became a model studied in business schools, a proof that compassion and structure could coexist. Former board members quietly donated. Executives sought his counsel, humbled by time, and in interviews, when asked about the turning point of his life, Alexander never mentioned the boardroom or the vote. He spoke instead of a small girl crying over a broken toy. Some things, he would say, aren't meant to be replaced. They're meant to be repaired, with patience, with courage, and with love. In a world obsessed with standing tall, Alexander learned the truest strength came from kneeling down. And that lesson, born from a child's tears, changed far more than one household. It changed lives.